Easily one of the most obnoxious people in right-wing media, Vinnie, otherwise known as the Angry Patriot, who is a longtime contributor on the Patrick Bet David podcast, a podcast full of a ton of people that are perfect examples of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where they're extraordinarily confident about issues that they have no understanding of. I've done videos in the past, specifically on TikTok, where I've evaluated their sourcing for certain claims. They had on Stephen A. Smith, just as a total side note, they had on Stephen A. Smith and were reading excerpts from an Instagram meme page, believing that they were real quotes. So that just gives you a sort of a little bit of an image and a little bit of insight into the type of work that this dude Vinnie engages in. He was recently on Piers Morgan talking about the murder of Alex Peretti by Customs and Border Patrol, as well as ICE agents who were in Minnesota. Let's go through this clip and just watch how Vinnie totally and utterly fails at justifying this shooting, because it's unjustifiable. Even many Republicans now, at least with respect to polling data, are able to evaluate and assess it as being so. But largely the American people understand and know this to be a clear-cut case of an unjustified shooting. Let's go ahead and watch Piers' exchange with Vinnie.
But Piers.
Well, hang on, Vinnie, hang on.
Piers.
But hang on.
Go ahead.
Here's my point. My point before you finish. My point about this is, the guy, I've had the complete opposite argument about these situations going back 20 years in America, which is that, I agree with you. I don't think people should be armed to the teeth all the time going to do any things like this, right? And yet this is the very argument used back at me, which is that actually, yes, he had a perfect legal right to carry that weapon and to carry his ammunition. At no stage in any of the videos have I seen him, has he been brandishing that weapon or trying to shoot anybody or pulling that weapon or anything like that. In fact, the opposite. What we see is a pack of 8 ICE officers descend on him, and one of them very clearly reach down and take this guy's weapon out of his holster on his waist and take it away, and he is then shot with the first shot a second after that, when they know he's unarmed. So every part of this fails, but so does the logic. I have to say, to me, there's an hypocrisy on the conservative right, which is that I've always been told right to bear arms, Second Amendment, no one can interfere with that. Yet when this guy does it, suddenly this is wrong. I don't remember that being the way the Kyle Rittenhouse debate was framed, right? I didn't see people on the conservative right then saying that. They said the opposite.
That's right.
Piers, I'm not. Hold on. You're talking about a military veteran pro Second Amendment. I'm not saying any of that. But if you're going to go there and disrupt and get into a fight, because Piers, all of you are watching this slowed down, nice video. It's happening in seconds in real time. And my point about the gun is, Piers, my opinion, when they disarmed him, he doesn't know the gun is gone. It goes off. He's still reaching for the magazines, which he thinks are a gun. But Piers, here's the point. Why is this all happening in Minnesota? Can we stop?
So before we get into what he's about to say, he's already beginning to pivot because he knows it's indefensible. Oh, it was happening in real time. Isn't that sort of the issue, though? Shouldn't you feel confident about whether or not the gun was off of him or being fired? Shouldn't you know or have some sort of a confident evaluation that what you're about to do, put 6 to 10 bullets in this man's back, is a legitimate use of force? Shouldn't the fact that you are surrounded with several other federal agents provide some sort of context in grounding whether or not this person is actually engaging in a sort of lethal threat? Shouldn't you know whether or not your other agents are taking the weapon away from this man? Shouldn't any of that be the case? It's abhorrent. Like we cannot allow for American lives to be taken based off of scared hunches that federal agents have in the moment, right? That can't be the case. Being armed, which is a Second Amendment right that the right proclaims to defend, should not be a pretext justification for an officer fearing that you're going to take their life when you've done no such thing in unholstering or brandishing your weapon, right? That cannot be the case. So already, Vinnie is just totally sidelining this, and now he wants to talk about Minnesota politicians. So let's go ahead and get into that.
Point. Why is this all happening in Minnesota? Can we stop? In Texas, there's 10 times more illegal deportations. You don't hear none of this, Piers. None of this. You know why it's in Minnesota, Piers? Because Tim Walz, Mayor Fry, Ilhan Omar are pushing for people to get in their faces and do this type of stuff. Under Obama, you didn't hear any of it.
So this is hilarious to me, considering it's the question as to why we're seeing so much of this happen in Minnesota is actually a good and fair question, but it's not what Vinnie proclaims it to be, in that it's just Minnesota state and federal lawmakers within the state who are encouraging people to engage in civil disobedience or obstruction of justice or protests in the street, etc. Much of the reason why there has been a recent influx of federal agents to the state is because of that Nick Shirley video alleging daycares run by members of the Minnesota Somali community engaging in fraud. It was subsequently after that video that you saw a major uptick in federal agents in the state. Trump is weaponizing ICE and other federal agencies against blue cities and blue states as a means of force. And we even recently saw a letter sent to Minnesota lawmakers by Pam Bondi threatening that the federal agents would not be withdrawn unless the Trump administration and the federal government gets access to voting machines leading up to the midterms. So we know that this is used as a political ploy against the state, and it's specifically designed to target blue cities and blue states. We know that for a fact.
Okay, and he deported way more people than Trump. He's kicking Trump's butt in deportation. But I want to know something too, Piers. It's funny how all these leftists, all these Democrats, like last week when it was that 5-year-old kid, oh my God, he was detained. No, his illegal father ran away and abandoned him, all right? Nobody here even knows that freaking kid's name. The mother didn't want to take him. I'm just curious, everybody on the panel who's here. Does anybody know who this is? Mark, Lewis, anybody? This is Ivory Smith, 7 years old. She was in her mother's car, and a freaking drunk driver, illegal, hit her and killed her, okay? Do you know who this is? You guys want to talk about Alex being a nurse? This is Laken Riley. She was jogging in school, and guess what happened? A guy raped her, tried to rape her. She fought back for 11 minutes, and then he crushed her head. Why wasn't she on the news? Why didn't you hear about her? And
so Laken Riley not only was on the news, she has an act in her name. But I think Vinnie is revealing himself to be too small-minded and too much of an idiot to understand that violence perpetrated by the state, murder, executions perpetrated by taxpayer-funded members of the state who are supposedly supposed to be upholding justice, who are supposedly supposed to be protecting American citizens, is markedly worse than random violence from undocumented immigrants, documented immigrants, or legal U.S. citizens. And of those three, legal U.S. citizens commit more, both in total rate and as a matter of per capita. So bringing up these instances of violence or horrific acts committed by undocumented immigrants is a total non-point. The reason why there's justifiably more outrage when members of the state do it is because they are held to a higher expectation. It's like when Donald Trump does the most ridiculous, absurd shit in his rhetoric or espousals on Twitter or lies constantly, and then people on the right will point to, oh, well, what about this random Democrat on Twitter? Well, what about George Floyd? Well, what about this random other? Do we not have different standards for the federal government, the president of the United States, members of law enforcement than we do random acts of immigrants? Clearly, Vinnie is too much of an idiot to comprehend that concept.
Lastly, you know what this is?
Put the moral in the news.
And then he continues.
I think all of us should be on the
I'm
news.
curious.
Well, I think they
But I also am wondering, did Vinnie break his ankles pivoting this hard? Because notice how all he'd said in addressing Alex Peretti's murder was that, well, it happened in real time. I don't know. The officer kind of just didn't know. I don't know. Also, did you guys see a bunch of what other things? Minnesota, Illinois. They are dogs for the Trump administration. When the Trump administration tells them to bark, they bark. When they say sit, they sit. They will do anything to defend this administration, and they're hacks. Vinnie is a total hack, and he's an idiot, and he's obnoxious. He gets, I think for me, there's a lot of idiots within political media, but people like Vinnie piss me off more so because their idiocy is on display in full confidence. He is the Angry Patriot. He's a man who's pissed off at how idiotic he is.